Arcadia is the homeland of the Fae, where banality and mortal bodies are but horrifying nightmares to scare childlings. The idea of Arcadia serves as hope for changelings, hope that the gates to their homeland will open once again, and although all Kithain have at least a few memories from having lived there during the previous ages, no changeling knows how much of this remembrance is real and how much is wishful thinking or fancy. In the end though, what is real when discussing dreaming? Hello, and welcome to a new lore video on Changeling the Dreaming. In the last video, we discussed the dream dance, and in this video, we'll be discussing the mythic history of the Kithain. Much of Kithain history is lost to modern changelings, or at the very least, it is as much myth as fact. Because changelings tend to forget their magical nature as they age, the history of their people is often forgotten as well, and then remembered in bursts during a new incarnation. The most common means of learning about the past, then, is through the traditional art of storytelling. Even with the scarcity of balefires, fonts of glamour, in modern nights, no freehold, constructed places of fairy power where the Kithain may rest free from the hold of banality and disbelief, turns away a storyteller, for their talents of weaving tales into life is unmatched by anything an academic historian could present. Long-forgotten acts of villainy and heroism, hope and loss come to life through their words, leaving audiences captivated with the hope of Arcadia's recovery, and the idea that perhaps they are the ones to accomplish this epic undertaking. All it takes is the belief that, despite all pain and horrors that have befallen the Kithain, theirs is the story with a happy ending. Despite the thrill and excitement of hearing legends brought to life by storytellers, academic history is an extremely important factor in the pursuit of lost fairy knowledge, turning myth into truth. Many changelings lead their lives among vast numbers of tomes and ancient texts, hoping to fulfill their dreams of prestige among their peers, and possibly finding clues to Arcadia in the process. Ancient texts are written in several, often pictographic fairy languages, and quite often the words seemingly come alive, constantly realigning, rotating, and shifting locations to avoid being decoded. So working with such materials requires a certain type of individual with high endurance and patience. The dreaming protects its secrets, but there's no consensus among the Kithain as to why information remains hidden for them as well. Even when enough common denominators exist for a decent decoding, the end results often cause further questions rather than providing answers. A basic timeline, however, can be pieced together. In the beginning, dark fae ruled everything. Born out of the rudimentary dreams of humanity's primal ancestors, these twisted and malevolent Fomorians strode across the world, wielding the magic of gods through the dreaming, leaving fear and sadness in their wake. All the lesser creatures bowed before the living shadows, the suffocating winds, and the walking mountains. Fomorians came in all forms and shapes, unified by an appearance that instilled horror and obedience in all who witnessed their might. Humanity toiled away in worship, adapting to their masters' merciless wills, but never receiving anything in return but death and destruction. As the mortals slept, the dreaming listened. It heard the cries of anguish and manifested new, yet primal, life through the waters, earth, winds, and fires around the world, to challenge the rule of the Elder Dark. Enraged and filled with feelings of betrayal by the dreaming, the Fomorians shaped minions of their own dreams, and named them the Thalian, sending them across the land to enforce their dark decrees with blood and forced obedience. Eventually, the Thalian came into contact with the nature fairies, and the forces of darkness and primal nature clashed. In an effort to destroy the world and reshape it more to their liking, namely without obstructions to their right to rule, the Fomorians assembled and unleashed all their magic on nature itself. Facing total annihilation by not risking everything, the nature fae responded in kind. As the two massive forces clashed, the world changed for good. Although the Fomorians failed and the event claimed vast numbers of destroyed fairies on both sides, the aftermath of what would come to be called the Great Unleashing provided the world with true life, and mortals changed along with it, acquiring a sense of order and higher ideals. Out of the dreaming, more new fairies emerged, warriors of light meant to thwart the darkness plaguing humanity's dreams. Among the fairy clans that arose, the Tuatha De Danann was Dana, a strong and wise woman more in tune with the world's harmony than the others of her kind. As the clans intermingled with mortals, guiding them towards a brighter future, Dana ventured into the dreaming and used her magic to birth fairies out of humanity's nuanced minds, just as the dark fairies had done with the Thalion. Some of these fairies included the Sidhe, who assumed the roles of leaders and stewards, the Slua, who kept a watchful eye on the Fomorians from the shadows, and the tricksters Clurican and Puka, who engaged humanity's fickle aspects. With these champions at their side, the Tuatha De Danann shed their mortal disguises and went to war against the Fomorians. As war between the fairies of light and dark raged, the natural fae who survived the Great Unleashing joined the Tuatha cause. Fomorians reached into the minds of their remaining subjects, coaxing them to dream forth new soldiers, the Dark Kin. Territories changed ownership on an hourly basis, and the ground was stained with fairy blood. Centuries passed and humanity continued to develop, and so too did the Tuatha and the Fae, relying on their glamour. Once, in an effort to end the war, both sides sent their armies to clash in 9 climactic battles in the Dreaming. During the final conflict, the Red King, leader of the Fomorians and warlord of their unified armies, entered the fray, wielding the Triumph Cask of Sorrows, a magical weapon containing all the world's nightmares and destructive energies. The Red King refused to unleash the magic contained within, having been warned by its creator that such an act would consume everything that ever existed, including their own kind. The treasure brimmed with such magic that even while contained, it caused rains of fire and acidic vapors to consume enemies for miles around, and with a single strike, the Red King shattered mountains. Just as everything seemed lost, a group of Tuathan forces managed to enter the Red King's encampment and engage the Fomorians' leader in combat. Through a stroke of luck, or perhaps through intercession by the Dreaming itself, the Red King fell, but his heart was so full of rage that his dying soul lashed out against his own weapon, shattering it into 9 pieces that scattered across the world. With their leader defeated and the loss of their fearsome weapon, the Elder Dark and their minions surrendered. To prevent their enemies from ever returning among mortals and wielding the direct powers of the Dreaming, the Tuatha De Danann chained and imprisoned the courts of the Fomorians in the depths of the Dream Forest, on the peaks of the Dream Mountains, and at the bottom of the Dream Sea, before entering the Dreaming, never to be seen or heard from again. Events become history. History becomes legends. Legends become myths. And myths are forgotten. Centuries passed as Fae continued the efforts of the Tuatha De Danann. While humanity continued to develop, adapted new ideals, and built larger settlements, the Fae followed suit. Trusting humanity to continue in their set ways as directed by them, the Fae turned to their own kind and left mortals to fend for themselves. The brutal nature that gave form to the Fomorians still festered in humans, however, and without their guidance, it surfaced, causing conflicts to erupt. Fairy society was not immune to this either, so when mortals went to war, so did the courts. Though the Fae never acknowledged it on the few occasions they took a look at the world around them, humanity continued to develop and grow on its own without them. By learning to control fire, they adapted it to cooking, crafting, and metalworking, until one day, someone created the first cold iron object, the very weakness of the Dreaming itself. In that same moment, the armies of the Fae engaged in the Battle of Stones, which came to a halt as the world sundered beneath their feet and separated dream from flesh forever. It's impossible to say with certainty what initiated the sundering, whether it was truly the act of humans discovering cold iron, or if the Fae committed some sort of atrocity that the Dreaming saw fit to punish. While it took place over the course of almost a millennium, the initial blast of the sundering ripped magic out of the world, separating the Dreaming from the mundane permanently. Religions told mortals to worship new gods and to turn away from old traditions and rules. The Fae spent so much time infighting that humanity simply forgot them. They forgot their old promises and oaths to the children of the Dreaming, and as their stories faded, humanity's age dawned. Kithain referred to the following centuries as the Dim Years, a suitable name for a bleak period in their history. Although the world separated, Trods, roads infused with glamour, made it possible to travel between the dreaming and the autumn world, the world of the humans. Courts turned to using changelings as spies and tools for learning. Some were children of dalliances with mortals, and others were babies exchanged, or more accurately, stolen by the Fae. Mortal flesh became a shield against this new threat, and the true Fae cloaked their souls inside magical copies of human bodies when venturing out into the autumn realm. Through these subtle machinations, the courts hope to stem the tide of banality. In the next Changeling the Dreaming lore video, we'll continue discussing their mythic history, including the Shattering, arguably the most important event, at least for modern changelings. I make World of Darkness lore videos multiple times a week, so if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Beware, Kithain. It is dangerous to dream too little.